Okay, it is July 10th. It is the Digital Roundtable time. We have a great guest, and we have people pouring in. It is hot. It's very hot, humid, interesting. We got three folks, I think, are regionally, locally here in the Austin area. And then our own Llewellyn King is somewhere in Rhode Island, I think. And before we get rolling, we're going to ask our own John Sibley Butler for some music.
Out of southern Illinois, came a down home country boy, gonna make it in the city playing guitar in the studio. Soon as he got there, met a with flower. You know, she took him for his money and left him in a cheap hotel. Hey, mom and dad, I had to call collect cause I ain't got a cent to my name. I'm living in the hotel doorway and tonight it's gonna rain. And if you could just send me some money, I'll be back on my feet again. Send it to the care of the Christian Mission, box number 10.
All right. Nice. Very nice, Johnny. So, we talk about digital transformations. There's a lot going on. Digital 360 Summit is in my head. We got Kirk Watson, the mayor, keynoting, Michael Pesson, Deputy Secretary of Energy, keynoting. We got Mike Arellano, Deputy District Engineer of TxDOT, keynoting. We got Mike Sanders, head of unmanned vehicles from Texas A&M, keynoting. It's going to be an amazing thing. And our own John Sibley Butler will be keynoting. And we have Llewellyn King that will be keynoting. And there's going to be a wrestling match between Llewellyn King and John Butler. And nobody wants to miss that. So, Johnny, what's on your mind?
Well, what's on my mind is keynoting. My good friend, I'm going to ask John Mackey to do a keynote. I don't know if he would do it or not, but the reason is when you look at what's going on in the world, we have another discussion of capitalism and where capitalism is. And he did his first book was about constructive capitalism, and he has another book called The Entire Story. And I used to use his book in my classes to introduce issues with capitalism and how the issue started, where we are, and where we're going. So I'm composing an email to John Mackey. I won't promise you anything, but it would be great for him to do a keynote. The other thing that's really going on, I have really been meeting with lots and lots of startups again. I just had a meeting with one today. I had one yesterday. I had a coach to fly in from Europe, and he does Europe NBA basketball. Now get ready for this, Andreas. In Europe, they're to the point where they can look at the relationship between gut and performance. They know when a player will not play well. They'll know when a player will get tired. This is a European basketball league. And so we're going to bring that technology to America, just like you bring a Volkswagen to America. Because the ultimate thing in America is opportunities and jobs and opportunities. But we must have someone to create the opportunities. Companies do not just spring up. Companies are done by great individuals who wake up and say, I think I want to do a company. And if you look at what we're doing in the medical field, Andreas, where the doctors are saying, well, I'm not interested in just treating the symptoms. I want a wellness clinic. And as you know, we're doing that now. Mm-hmm. So I've been concentrating on those things. And then you got the general stuff that's going on. You have the European theater and what's going on over there. You have what's going on in the Middle East. And I'm keeping my eye on the importance of China and all of their technologies. I love watching all the things that they're doing. I think it is absolutely amazing. Now, I would not comment on the presidential race. I'm gonna let Llewellyn, my distinguished colleague, do that. So, but I'm doing fine. There's a lot going on. CNBC technologies, we're moving right along. But the technology scene, or the new job creation scene, is really going well.
Yeah, yeah, great. Llewellyn, how are you, sir?
Thank you. I've been busy with two things. One, these new technologies that will be deployed within about a decade. And we had a bunch of them on the program this morning. They included a use of natural gas without any emissions, a storage system using carbon for very large scale storage with very long drawdown times and long survivability. Once it's charged up, it can remain charged for long periods of time. That's very interesting. And also better connectors so that you can move a lot more power down the line. If you go away from a steel support rod in the middle of your connector, your power line, you can have fewer pylons. You can use more and use it differently of the aluminum conductor, and the result is you can double the amount of power going down a single line. There's a company in California, and there are a number of them now manufacturing and deploying these. They're not just possible things, they're something that's working, and that's very interesting. But there's been a huge complication in the electric field, which we really don't know the full ramifications of yet, and that's the Chevron deference decision by the Supreme Court. For 40 years, agencies of the government have had a rulemaking procedure. When Congress has been imprecise, as it usually is in legislation, or it's poorly drafted, or it's just not clear, there is a procedure which was agreed in the Reagan years with Reagan's support, which has come to be known as the Chevron deference. But anyway, it is how we have rulemakings, where utilities and electricity is affected. It's rulemakings in the EPA, in the FERC particularly, and suddenly all this is being negated by the Supreme Court, which says courts have supremacy. Now, under the Chevron deference, courts agreed to hold back. Litigation was a last resort. Now it's going to be the first resort. And all hell is going to let loose. We're going to have people looking for favorable judges. We're going to have judges passing on complex things like the flow of electricity. I mean, we're going to have judges passing, or juries, which is worse, because when a jury has a finding of fact, you cannot challenge that. You cannot appeal a finding of fact from a jury. You can do it from a judge, but it's most appeals are on procedural issues. So we think there may be 5-7 years of delay in implementing new years while this thing sorts itself out, and while the courts, which are going to be inundated with court cases coming from every regulatory agency, the FAA, the FCC, FDA, Agriculture Department, all of these things that were decided within the agency are now going to be decided in the courts. So you can imagine the court shopping that's going to go on. For example, if you, there's a federal Southern District in West Virginia, so if you have an issue about carbon emissions, they're going to rush to West Virginia to get a favorable ruling, because West Virginia is very favorable and very hostile to environmental rules regarding carbon. It's a big coal producer. So this is a huge impediment, and it's something that's going to take a long time to resolve, and there's no easy resolution because it's the Supreme Court. You're not going to rush back there and say, hey guys, you made a mistake. And it was a not nearly unanimous decision by the conservative justices on the Supreme Court. Huge consequence, a body blow to the way we have done business for a long time in the United States. and how we have made rules and regulations to implement laws passed by Congress. Now, Congress has handed over imprecise laws. Now courts will make the decisions, not the regulatory agencies that have to oversee them. It's a disastrous or potentially disastrous situation. I've been covering it very heavily for the past 3 days, been on the phone, made one television show, been on the phone with dozens of experts, and it looks fairly catastrophic. Take a while for it to dawn on people quite what has happened and how they're going to ameliorate this. You cannot have the courts running the country, not in that way. How is a judge one day going to be deciding an issue of parts per billion in drinking water, and the next day on how much carbon can be emitted from a refinery? I mean, it's too much to ask a judge, and it's certainly too much to ask a jury, but that's what the Supreme Court has said we have to do. Meanwhile, I'm very excited by the progress in technology in the electric space. As I said, I had a lot of people on a Zoom virtual press briefing. I do them once a month. This morning, encouraging, very good news from fusion, very good news about conductors, very good news about storage, and very good news about entirely new ways of approaching old problems. And that is exciting. I call it the electron renaissance. If you think of the Renaissance being both a rediscovery and a discovery and an enlightenment, it's coming about so that all the old calculations we did may not be valid. Take, for example, the matter of data centers and the amount of electricity that it is imagined they're going to use. They use a lot. The AI is just chewing up electricity. But I just came back, as you know, from an AI conference in Spain and was blown away learning about photon cells. If we get a light system operating in a computer rather than an electric system, we don't have the heat, we don't need all this electricity. It's coming, it hasn't arrived. The pioneering firm is the NTT, the Japanese firm, but many companies are working on it, doing a photon voltaic system with chips, which may change the future yet again. So it's a very dynamic, very exciting time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, since you're talking about that, I want to share my screen real quick to show everybody what I'm looking at. Hopefully you can see my screen. Do you see the ERCOT website?
Yes, sir.
So we ERCOT right now is looking okay. We have 8,000 megawatts of capacity saving, 8 gigawatts sitting there. You can see the curve on the wind and the solar and what's going on. And if you click through this dashboard, you get deeper into all these other dashboards, and you can see if there are any outages and the mix of the grid and all that. And there's something that is being worked on in the grid, which is how the edge is going to be more dispatchable, actionable, real-time managed control. And this notion of virtual power plants has emerged. There was a conference that I had the pleasure of chairing about a month ago. And the reason I share all this, because our next guest, who I have the pleasure to introduce, Ignacio Juarez, is actually the CEO of a company that is cracking the code on where things are heading. So Ignacio is the CEO and founder of EnnoFlow Technologies and will be with us for the hour. EnnoFlow is what I would call a next generation AI plus energy company, delivering the first energy router for monitoring, controlling, and managing distributed energy supply and demand efficiently and affordably from any vendor and any device. I am so interested in learning more. Ignacio, welcome.
Thank you very much, Andres, and thank you for allowing me to be part of this prestigious roundtable. First of all, I'm joining from Buenos Aires, Argentina today. So thank you very much for everybody's time. And yeah, we're working here trying to put our hat as founders, been involved in the clean energy for the last 17 years now, developing technologies and seeing how we are evolving into this energy transition and how we can really disrupt and use all these technologies to really make a huge change in how we are generating, moving, and consuming the electrons, right? I'm wrote down the phrase about electrons renaissance. I love it. I'm gonna probably use it in my future keynotes. But yeah, I'm feeling the same way, right? We are changing everything. I think that it's a great time to stop the ball, being making some analogies with soccer. Stop the ball and start from scratch, from where we are, what needs to be done, and always trying to figure out how we can do that in compliance with existing regulations, right? Something that works today for everybody without having to change the rules, because it's gonna involve a lot of people, time, and we need to do something today. So that's why we are trying to combine.
Yeah, so take a little longer to give a little background on you and how you ended up with EnnoFlow and where the idea came from, and then explain a little bit what this energy router does and how does it work.
Awesome. Well, I've been involved in clean energy for the last 17 years, starting a mechanical engineer by train, so developing wind turbines, solar panels, even bomb disable robots and racing cars in my past years as engineer. So I really been involved in clean energy. We need to reduce the carbon footprint and need to decarbonize the industry. But in the last couple of years, I felt that we need to do something more, and really with the adoption of AI, how AI can provide a new layer of optimization into the whole industry, is that we decided to step down from that position and start building this new future with EnnoFlow. And what we're trying to do is that we found that there is a huge disconnection between what's happening in front and behind the meter, right? It's considered like two different worlds. Being the meter, the edge of the grid, behind the grid is what we call the Wild Wild West. A lot of different vendors, different protocols, different things, and everybody doing whatever they want to do there. So what we notice is that we need to provide a solution there that actually can merge all the load consumption devices that are working in the behind the meter environment, optimizing the demand side flexibility, the demand side flexibility of the equation, optimizing all those assets, making them interact and work together with the grid, and merging those two environments into one. To do that, we are relying on our proprietary AI technology that allow us to gather real-time data, interact with what is happening in the different loads, devices that are connected there, and at the same time working with BPPs, EMS, and different grid AI technologies, I said, to make the system as one and build what we call last mile energy distribution environment, with the objective of creating transactive energy platforms and keep distribution below substation levels, allowing us to reduce the pressure on transmission and distribution, right? So that's exactly what we're trying to build at EnnoFlow with this router, building the first platforms for what we discussed.
And could you share real quick who is interested in this product? Who wants to buy it from you?
Well, luckily for us, we're having a great traction. First of all, of course, we are having infrastructure partners like Dell Technologies that are helping us to develop this technology, companies like NVIDIA and Intel on the adoption of these chips. But also we're working with a lot of transmission distribution companies that and are the ones having the pain of how long it takes to provide transmission and distribution new lines, and how they can reduce the time and money involved in new transmission distribution line, how you move the electrons from one side to the other. So those companies are the ones that are helping us to grow and develop these technologies. Of course, there are a lot of other partners that we are developing and partnering, like, for example, telecommunication companies. We had a great advisor that told us that we are like the Cisco of the energy industry, providing the infrastructure about how we can interact within electrons and data, translate electrons to data and data to electrons. So once we transform and translate the electrons into data, we can allow the companies that are really involved with data management to be part of in the energy industry, and allowing them to become energy providers into the behind the meter and transactive platforms, right? So those are the companies that mainly we are serving. We have a lot of industrial facilities, telecommunication companies, and large marquee projects, including utilities, that are the ones that are seeing this as the future, not what's going to happen next year. Actually, we're envisioning these energy distribution platforms to what's going to be the future in 30 to 50 years in the energy industry, right?
Butler has a question.
Ignacio, I am so glad you are here, Ignacio, because I've got some questions for you. I think that you said right at the center.
I have some answers.
Yeah, well, let me just say this. All right, so if we look at in front of the grid, the utilities are delivering the process, right? They do a great job. But the Internet of Things, or what we call behind the meter, is where the problem is, and you can agree or disagree. Now, this is what we know from being around Andreas and having this great show on, right? The big question is, how do we get, and nobody's answered this, all of the clean energy back onto the grid, all of the stuff, let's call it the Internet of Things, that's happening behind, right, the meter. Ignacio, there are so many technologies now, but here's the problem. This is a regulated industry, as you know. The utilities will not move in the face of this regulation. America is spending billions, not 1 million, billions and billions of dollars on research relating to the grid, especially what's happening behind the meter. So Ignacio, how do we bring, here's a $1 million, what a $2 billion question. I'm coming from Texas, it'll be $1 million question if Lou Allen was answering, but the $2 billion question is, we got all this stuff, Ignacio. How do we get it on? How do we go get past the regulation? And how do we tell the utilities, you will do fine, even though you're working on a 1920 technology, we're going to change it. Just tell me, how do you think, what's your vision of doing that?
First of all, and even if we are building technologies that can be really useful for utilities, we're not envisioning the utility as our customer, right? At the end, the guy that is behind the meter is the guy that is paying the bills, and it's supporting the industry. So we are trying to make a better value proposition for them. And that's why we are building this technology, the EnnoFlow Compass unit, that is the one that is using this AI platform and AI integration to really see how we are dealing with the flow of electrons behind the meter. We're completely agnostic, so we can deal with any kind of generation or consumption, even manage EVs in 2 ways. We are interacting with those assets and using this AI integration plus behavioral integration plus weather integration plus grid integration to decide which is the best way to move the electrons around. We're behind the meter. I will say that fortunately for us, the regulation is with the utilities up to the meter, so we can easily reduce how we are feeding energy back into that grid to allow us to reduce the energy bills and provide a better solution for these end users, right? Without the need of having the compliance with from the utility, as we are not using in this stage this solution. But to be sincere, with that and adding a lot of these other companies that are not involved today into the clean energy environment, like telecommunication companies, to seeing that they can be part of this game, that they can generate revenue by doing this, and they can use and integrate different things. What we are doing and what we are showing to utilities is that things can change, that you can think about doing things in a different way, keeping business models or adapting existing business models to actually improve their services, improve their margins, reduce the cost, and optimizing the whole system and the whole environment as one, right? What we want to do is to allow them to manage on real time and in an autonomous way the demand side. And that's the kind of solution and technology that we want to provide, and that we want to show them that it's possible to do, and helping them to solve that huge issue that they're having. Of course, the way that we are doing that is with a really high quality product, focusing on one thing that nobody's talking about, that is reducing or optimizing LCOE, right? Probably in the energy industry in the last 5 years, nobody's talking about LCOE anymore. They are just adding layers and layers of cost. Now with the AI, people is just adding more things and more layers and BPPs and softwares, but nobody is thinking about how we can optimize the LCOE. That it's at the end the name of this game. More affordable electricity allows us to provide reliable energy to everybody that everybody can afford, democratizing access to energy around the world. So even if we have some regulations and things that needs to be in compliance with, we are really focusing on global markets, how we can provide a worldwide infrastructure to move electrons and data around the world. That's the objective and how we're trying to do that, showing that there are different ways to do it. And as I like to do, provide a win-win relationships to everybody, right?
Like that. You know, this is, as you know better than me, this is an industry that moves like a glacier, a slow-moving glacier, right? And this is an industry that advertises itself as cheaper, 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 and your lights are on. This is an industry that has looked at technologies and the utilities for the last 15 or 20 years. Maybe Llewellyn can go back further. They just have not responded, in my opinion, to the new technology. Now we have smart grids. A lot of stuff has changed, right? And that stuff has changed, in front of the meter, right? And the Internet of Things, where there'll be billions of things attached to it. And then all of the things that you mentioned, the clean energy, the wind, and et cetera. Well, it just can't sit there as an independent event. And my next question is, what are we doing to get the distributive energy, the energy back on the grid so it can be distributed in a different kind of way?
Well, two things, right? I completely agree with you on how slowly this industry moves. And as you know, if you want to make something more efficient, what you need to do is to add competition, right?
You gotta have competition. I love it. Yes, I love it. So
that's
you hit it right on the head. You hit it right on the head. You're my man. You're my main man. Yes. Okay. No competition. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's exactly what we're trying to do, right? And that's why this technology is allowing a lot of companies that are today not involved in the energy industry to become energy vendors and providers. There are a lot of countries that already allows the interaction and using the existing grid long distances to trade electricity within DR sources. There is no technology today that it's allowing these companies to do that and interact. There are a lot of BPPs and different software platforms, but I think that everybody is missing a key part of the components here. And we have, from one side, people doing software, right? A lot of software, it's great, it's easy, AI optimization, but we are forgetting that the electron is a particle, right? And it still needs to be considered as a hardware. We need to wire things to connect them from one side to the other. So if we are just building software solutions, really we are just consuming and putting more layers into data servers that needs to be energized, right? But we really need a muscle for that brain or interactions to move the electrons around. And that component, that missing link between the software and hardware is what the EnnoFlow Compass is this infrastructure that, as we said, is the Cisco that allow us to work with Wi-Fi everywhere in the world and digitalize the electrons around is what we're building, allowing these companies to become competitors into new environments to allow the end user to decide what they want to do, allowing us to interact with existing regulations, how we can deal with these regulations worldwide, in Europe, in some countries in the Middle East that's already approved. And knowing that, as you mentioned, there are some companies have glaciers that are moving slowly, but sometimes if you have a fire or summer is coming, you have a really high flow river coming down, right? And you need to adapt yourself. And we are melting the glaciers.
Llewellyn
Thank
has
you.
a question. Let Llewellyn jump in.
Yeah, I don't fully understand, or maybe understand at all, what it is you are selling. Is it hardware or software or a system, and who pays you? When you go out on the road to get customers, to whom do you make your solicitation?
Yeah, well, it's a little bit of everything. And I'm going to tell you why it's a little bit of everything. First of all, it's a hardware platform. We are building a hardware unit that is the one that allows you to see what's happening with the electrons and interact with those electrons. Basically, it's roughly the cost of a computer that you install in your house. And that's why companies like Dell is working with us to provide and build these technologies. And it's replacing all the other existing components in your behind the meter environment, right? Like inverters, breakers, a lot of different inputs, all the power electronics plus smart technologies is into our unit and how we install that. From there, we got a lot of different people that is working with us. I call them the misfits, the ones that we used to work for all these companies, that used to build these technologies for other companies. And everything is connected into a central brain that is the one that is running our proprietary AI algorithm, that is the one knowing and deciding what needs to be done with the flow of electrons, how to interact with the grid. As we know, there are a lot of grid-based AI technologies from large and small corporations, but consider the meter or the smart meter as the edge of what they are doing, guessing what's happening behind the meter, and allowing all these companies installing solar panels in your house, or EV chargers, or EV manufacturers, or thermostats to decide what to do, try to share some data or not, and working in an environment of really low resolution data. So what we are doing...
Who pays you? Is the homeowner going to buy the hardware? Is the utility going to buy the hardware? Who pays you? Where does the money come from? And how do you measure success? Is it a 20% improvement in assessment? Is it a 5% improvement? Just DER, they're looking for 10 to 15% without any hardware beyond probably a thermostat. The Google is big in this area. It is sponsoring a company called Renew Home, and basically it's the old NIST thermostat, and Google says you're going to get huge, but they're not looking outside of the home. So it's a somewhat, in my view, a narrow, but they've got a lot of money. They put $100 million behind Renew Home and its other partner, which was Ohm, I forget what it was called, Ohm Connect. These are big players looking for that same space. I somehow think there's not room in the space for too many vendors, is there?
Not really, to be sincere. We're not a direct competitors to them. And the reason is that we merge all those hardwares into a single unit. And by merging all those hardware components, we are replacing your smart meter, your smart panel, your solar inverter, your EV charger, your small hydro turbine, your battery EMS. All the technologies and hardware components are inside our hardware unit, right? So the upfront cost for you is much cheaper. In the whom is our customer and whom is paying for this, we have three tiers, to be sincere, 3 goes-to-market different strategies. The first one, of course, is the easy one and the quick one. That is how we are installing this with early adapters, right? People that is installing different components in their houses, like solar system, batteries, EV chargers, and that kind of technologies or smart panels today. Those guys are consolidating everything into our unit, so they can retrofit this to their existing installation at a much lower cost with a technology that is not only allowing them to do one thing like controlling their solar system or their panel with an app. It's actually allowing them not only to do that by AI by itself, also it's allowing them in the future to connect with their neighbors and do energy P2P. That's
How
the
many
environment that
of these units are now installed?
not a lot of them. We're actually raising capital to finish the certification of these technologies. It's what we are building and what we are doing with this. But meanwhile, we are closing these partnerships and supply chain and distribution partners worldwide. We have more than 10,000 units in LOI already signed with utilities worldwide. And a lot of these companies are large corporations. For example, one of them is NEOM. NEOM is this city in Saudi Arabia that we need to provide. We have to provide the energy management technology for the city to move the electrons around the city, and also different solutions to integrate with our AI platform. And large corporations like Siemens is another one of our partners to deploy these technologies worldwide with Dell, right? So we are building and developing this technology right now. We are finishing the UL certification to be able to deploy this as an appliance in your house with compliance with regulations and everything, right?
Yeah, I didn't hear an answer on what's the efficiency. I mean, what's the gain? Is it 5%, 10%, 30% if your system is installed?
Well, actually, we have different ways to measure this because, of course, from one side, we are seeing what's happening on your panel. So we are reducing and optimizing the usage of your panel. So we are reducing consumption up to 25% on that. But at the same time, we are increasing performance by having self-learning algorithms into the MPPT controllers of all those assets. So we are improving the performance of those assets by 15%. Depending how big is your system and the efficiency on other appliances, how we are interacting with them. But we are between 40 to 50% improvement in efficiency compared to other technologies, right? That's what we're working with.
Thank you. Can I just, I know I'm taking too much time, but I wanted to just say to Johnny, you know, utilities sometimes move very quickly. In 1984, the aeroderivative turbine burst in the utility space. Gas turbines, as we know them today. Previously, gas was used in what they called thermal plants, which was gas under a boiler, much less efficient, etc. And there were some big turbines, which were called heavy frame turbines. But when this burst on the scene and the aircraft manufacturers started making turbines, GE, Rolls-Royce, etc., we saw a huge change. By the middle of the 1990s, gas turbines were changing the electric business. That is very quick. Likewise, when it appeared that the future was nuclear power, more than 100 reactors were built in a very short period of time. And more were ordered. They were never built, but an awful lot. So when the utility industry, individually or collectively, and usually collectively, sees a major advantage in a new technology, where I think they're very slow, and I agree absolutely with Johnny. I used to give lectures to the, I may have said this before, to the Electric Power Research Institute every year, to their technical information coordinators, and they always asked me the same subject. They always asked me, how can we get the utility to adopt what we have invented and they've paid for? But these usually were peripheral things, the big central things, gas generation, nuclear generation, and actually the swing to renewables have been done remarkably quickly, given the size of the utilities and the fact that they are constrained because they have to keep the lights on. They can't do something across the system that is experimental. So they have a discipline that nobody else has pretty well, except maybe air traffic control.
Thank you. Thank you.
It is my pleasure, sir.
So the way I get all this is you are pretty close to finishing, come out with a product that Siemens and Dell and many other companies, NVIDIA, Intel, are collaborating on creating and perhaps distributing themselves. And you have some large companies that they're talking to, utilities and large consumption companies. Is there an example of a large user internationally or anywhere that wants the product, and why do they want it?
Yeah, they're working with several of them, to be sincere. And the reason is that, and I was trying to explain the first stage, right? That is going to the end users, knocking their door. I know that we're not going to change the world knocking doors and asking people to install this in their houses, right? And that's why whom is our best partner is the utilities. And we are providing them with a technology that is a solution for them that allows them to provide a better service to their customers. And we want them to use our technology without any upfront cost to the user. And instead of replacing the panels or the smart meters, today they can install for the same cost. Our technology allows them to manage demand side. That's the objective. And that's what we want to do with them. Of course, there are financial things that needs to be involved and a lot of piloting, but a lot of utilities are seeing this as the future and relying that we need to do this or somebody else will do it. So we have several projects and piloting projects with not only NEOM to do this in a specific case study that it's the city, but also we have utilities, transmission companies in Europe, Enexis and Alliander. We have Tokyo Energy, Tokyo Electric, and other companies and utilities worldwide, Simply Energy, and other companies like Tapestry from Google that is developing AI technologies from the grid that really needs muscle to move the electrons behind the meter. You mentioned about a lot of these thermostats, but the thermostats are lacking on muscles to be able first to run the power that you need to do decentralized AI application. And at the same time, they are not able by design to manage the electrons. Where those thermostats are installed, they don't have the power electronics to manage the electrons, right? It's mainly sensors that are reading what's happening and using electrical or digital signals to provide some information on what needs to be done, but really can't control the electrons and more if they are larger consumption, right? And because of that, we are using the same design and architecture to work on different environments, including large industrial projects. We have a project from a company, one of the largest companies in Mexico, that is allowing us not only to control in a different scale what we are doing with your house and your electric vehicle. We started to provide a solution there to manage their fleets, their distribution fleets that are new electric trucks. And from there, now we are not only controlling that, we are also controlling their processes. We are controlling their solar panels. They have batteries and wind turbines in the same facilities, and being able to manage and optimize all those assets in a single unit, working with that company plus Siemens as the partner in that project. And the objective here is to work with that utility to move electrons around and be a distributed energy plant and not only a virtual power plant, right? That's what we're trying to work together, and that's the kind of project that we're building. It's gonna be difficult, we know that. Otherwise, I will be doing something else. I love challenges. That's why we are here, and it's part of the fun, right?
Yeah.
So
Let me ask you this, Ignacio. I'm guessing, I'm going back through my notes. I'm guessing we have spoken to probably 20 firms that that's trying to do what you do. That is, everybody is doing the software. They're doing the software mostly, and the hardware to make the utilities more efficient and the grid more efficient. Okay, now it's like the computer industry when it first started. In Austin, we had Austin Computers that was there. We had Dell Computers that was there. We had other people, computers that was there. Do you have any cross fertilization of ideas with firms that's similar to yours? Because I look now, the university professor, I would get a lot of research grants. And when I got those research grants, then I would seek out other professors around the country who was doing the same thing that I did. Sometimes we might get, an NSF grant, we're doing the exact same thing. What about this exactness? Do you have any cross fertilization with companies like yours that's trying to make the grid more efficient, or is everybody just working in a silo?
I believe that everybody is trying to make the grid more efficient. I'm trying to provide better electrons to the customers. That's my main goal.
Okay.
I can use the grid if it's needed. So that's not right. my making the grid more efficient is a sub-product of what we're trying to do here, right? And how we can optimize that part, how we can deal with demand side, how we can optimize demand side, how we can work with distributed energy platforms, transactive energy. And from there, a sub-product of that, it will be optimizing the grid, reducing the pressure on the grid. It's what we're trying to do, right? We are starting from a different way of thinking, completely different of how we can provide a better technology for the utility, or how we can help the utility doing this or that, right? I'm starting from simplifying the whole concept, how we can, without a utility, how we can provide a service here, what we can do, how we can make things optimal when there is no infrastructure or the infrastructure is not good enough. And from there, how we can scale, going from the first principles and trying to reduce complexity. I think that is crucial, at least on how I think about things. And that's what we are trying to do, right? There are a lot of people that think about different stuff here, there in the several years. We had this conversation with Andres several times, smart grids and how things were designed and thought about this. I believe that we are in a crucial time in history where we have the knowledge, the need, and the technology to be able to do that, right? So now we have tools like AI that will allow us to interact and connect all those assets in real time and work on how we can deal with all these things. If we try to do this 20 years ago, was impossible, right? You need somebody there trying to create a software or an algorithm to interact with all those parameters. Now Gen AI is allowing us to do that with a couple of lines of codes only. I was reading and checking the line of codes. When I started to code at the university, I saw the codes now, and it's something like crazy how simple it is, right? And that kind of things with Gen AI and how these systems are evolving are the tools that are allowing us to think different, try to think in a new way, and create new paradigms about how we can create a new industry.
I really like that answer because it brings me back to one of Llewellyn's questions about the business model. So in the content of your answer, I'm in visualizing different business models. I'm in visualizing people who would like to pay you, for your service. And it sounds like to me, Ignacio, that you're in a unique spot in the context of the industry here. It sounds like to me that you're in a unique spot to give great consulting to utilities, because at the end, like you said, the business model has to involve them, and they are concerned about delivering the best to their customers. So again, is your business model for you now and in the future? This is Llewellyn's early question. Is it very, very clear going into the future how you will be continued to get revenue, how the revenue will increase based on the changes in the technology of the industry. So how do you see that as a in the future in terms of your business models?
Of course, short term we are selling the hardware, right? You need to sell the technology, but once we come back crisis, you need more units out there, and you can leverage different financial solutions. And the goal is that we can charge people for helping them to move electrons and data. That's our business model. That's what we want to do. I don't want to be somebody selling you hardware. I don't want to be the one installing the wires in your house and selling for that. I want to be your energy provider, or helping the utility or distribution company to provide you with better electrons and help them to manage that data and electrons. And they pay me a fee of the extremely affordable energy that we are allowing you, affordable and reliable energy that you are using in your house. We'll take a percentage of that for being the ones managing and optimizing those bits and electrons. That's our business model.
And so it should grow exponentially in the future.
That's the goal. Exactly. That's the goal. We're envisioning, I always said, we're envisioning 8 billion customers. It's going to be tough, but well, what else, right?
Okay.
Somebody have to do it.
Yes. Well, I think that you're in a unique position, and I see you as a great consulting, information for the evolving changes that's happening in this industry. And look at all the research that ERCOT has done, and as it comes together, then you can really consult with firms on how to make not the grid more efficient, how to make your company around the grid more efficient.
Yeah, so to add to that, and to maybe help wrap up here the last 5 minutes, ERCOT released their planning plan. They were, had a lot of discussions over the last 2 years of where ERCOT is going, and ERCOT at peak is about 85 gigawatts, and they released a plan in last week in April where Pablo Vega, the CEO, basically committed to bringing to the grid in Texas an additional 40 to 50 gigawatts of energy by 2030. And a lot of people have discussed that there's not enough time to build enough generation to bring another 40 to 50 gigawatts of energy. So how is that going to get done? And maybe it's a combination of edge generation, virtual power plant interaction, and new generation at the utility scale. And so this is where the technology that EnnoFlow is driving could play a significant role. And when you think about data centers, electrification of the grid with EVs, and manufacturing coming back to the United States in general, and data centers with AI and flying vehicles proliferating, all these things, Johnny and Llewellyn, add a tremendous amount of new need of energy that we have discussed. And the question is, how are utilities going to solve the problem if they cannot build enough power plants? And it strikes me that the EnnoFlow solution may be actually what's missing.
And Llewellyn, that's from a consulting point of view. I mean, we understand you know how to build power plants, but they're providing, getting us out of the intricacies, if you will, the complexity, and leading us down a better road. That's what you're saying, because we know how to build power plants. Yes, right.
What I'm saying is that from time to time, I agree that utilities tend to be a bit glacial, but from time to time they've looked with astounding alacrity when there has been a really big and desirable option. Otherwise, they're very cautious. Also, they have to deal with regulators. They're not really at liberty to do everything they feel like doing. They have to get the approval of regulators not in Texas, where you are locally regulated, with the rest of the country, FERC, and then there's state regulators. In Texas, it's your state regulator and the structure of ERCOT. This is not a setup that allows for enormous experimentation and jumping on a new technology because you think it might pay out. It's a very constrained world. But what I find interesting is that if you look at utilities globally, all around the world, they really all seem to be in roughly the same predicament, use roughly the same equipment, with roughly the same challenges. Where there's open, free competition, they're not radically different from utilities in the US or Europe, which are regulated. So the dynamics restraining them are fairly substantial. They're economic, and they're to do with this special discipline of keeping the power flowing. You cannot shut down and retool. You cannot make a huge mistake. And that is a very confining reality that they exist with.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Ignacio, before we go, I'm curious, what's in front of you for the next 90 days, the next 6 months? What's going on at EnnoFlow?
A lot of things. Well, finishing this round is the first one, so we can keep building.
So you're raising money. You're raising money.
We're raising capital, yeah, in a really exciting new way of raising capital. We're trying to find always new ways to do things. So now we're working on a new structure that even JP Morgan consider this so disruptive that is helping us and supporting us to raise this capital. So if there is some investors, CVC or family offices that are willing to be part of EnnoFlow, more than welcome to have a chat and tell you what we are doing to basically have a risk almost free investment with us and supported by JP Morgan. From there, keep developing the technology, start deploying the first units out there with our partners, start deploying the first market projects. And one of the great things that we are doing, it's working, for example, with this project with NEOM, not only integrating and managing electricity or electrons, also managing other systems that the city is in need. And that's only for the next 2 or 3 months. From there, the goal is to keep building a better technology, a better solution, better value proposition for the customers. That's what we are trying to do, right? And always at the same time working on optimizing the hardware, making it more efficient, more reliable, more unhackable, and more resilient. But at the same time working on the software side, our proprietary platform that I'm really amazed about how it's evolving. Andres, we met like 6 months ago and we never spoke about that. It's something that just was created a couple of months ago when we realized that nobody is thinking about this new approach of seeing the energy industry from the behind the meter environment first and considering the grid as the connecting point of that, but mainly focus on what's happening on the other side of the desk, right?
Sure. Well, we look forward to having you and hosting you at Digital 360 Summit, on the Startup Showcase, and on stage, maybe at one of the smart energy and utilities panels. And obviously, you won't want to miss hanging out with Llewellyn and John Butler. Any final thoughts, gentlemen?
I think that we're seeing huge transition. Much of it is going to be about by people like our guest. I'm critical and questioning of new companies, but we do need them, and that's where the inventiveness will come from. And I'm all in favor of more inventiveness, new ways. Do not think the 5 fingers on the hand are the only options available. One of the weaknesses of the utility industry, indeed of all really large industries, is to want to do what they do and what they do well, and not to do what they haven't done and may not do well. So there's a constraint there. Years and years and years ago, I wrote a piece which Johnny might find interesting, in which I said, you know, a lot of companies are making silent movies when the talkies have been invented, because they like making silent movies. And this is a challenge to all companies, but it's an exacerbated challenge when you come to electric utilities because they're a new, unique situation. So when I look around the globe at these utilities, whether it's in Vietnam, where I visited with them in Vietnam or the Emirates, it doesn't matter. Some of the same realities exist. They all have peaks, they all have difficulty in serving their peaks, they all have political interference and people who think they know how to do it better than the utility does, and they all provide an utterly essential service. And their first and primary responsibility is that service, and it changes, it makes them different from other entities in the business space. And I wish you all the luck in the world, Ignacio, and I look forward to seeing you in September. And I envy you being in Buenos Aires, one of the truly lovely cities of the world.
Thank you very much.
And Johnny, final thoughts?
Well, I thought he was going to say Austin, Texas, one of the great cities of the world, and he was envious.
When are
So I
you
was
going to build
second
it?
best.
When are you
I was-
going
I
to
was-
build it? I'm waiting.
I just built it. Where have you been? I just built it. No,
I was
seriously, I
stuck in a
believe,
traffic jam. I was trying to be up there, but I was stuck in a traffic jam and had to go back to the airport.
this. I think that what I heard here today is very interesting. We've talked a lot about the technologies on the grid, but not necessarily about the management of those technologies and how to consult with the utility companies as they move forward. Most people have talked about the technologies themselves, not the complexity of bringing them all together in consulting. So I enjoyed the conversation. I learned a lot, and thank you very much. And remember,
Well,
if you want,
Thank you, guys.
I wish all the Argentinians good luck on the finals in Copa America. So,
Thank you for that. Yeah.
Johnny, take us away.
in the northern chill, when the village was quiet and still, I took a walk through the fallen leaves to the fisheries, where my old friend Pagliacci had coffee for me. Over the cobblestone streets of the town, picking apples that were strewn on the ground, and I could hear the sound of the surf and the cry of the seagull. All over, I've checked at the edge of the wall. Okay,
Thank you, guys.
all righty, take care. See you,
Thank you
Luella.
very
Take
much.
Thank you
care.
very much.
Ignacio,
you.
nice meeting you.
My pleasure.
Good luck.
I see you at the summit. Let's have some more talks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Watch
Have a
the
nice day.
wrestling. Watch the wrestling. It's the high point.
That's the high point. That's right. Okay. All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.